Jenny Marie, how's your bracket going?
Virginia really messed me up, but the other ones are great.
Wow. Yeah. No, I think that's my favorite sports terminology is great.
And the other ones?
Yeah. No, that's definitely, I think you should probably talk to other people about your sports knowledge.
Yeah, I did actually. The other week, I talked to Stacy Meisner, who runs the Anchorage Sports Association. And my lack of sports knowledge was, shall we put it, humiliating.
That's an interesting word to use. I mean, do you feel like that, like, compared to what we've been talking about on the Spotlight series with food, like, it was kind of like, oh, like, I didn't know, like, how to make a roux, or was it like, I don't know what a sport is?
It was more the latter, more the level of not knowing what sports are. But you know what I did learn?
Tell me.
A lot about nonprofit management, a lot about Stacy's personal story of going from grad school to leading a nonprofit, and how a participant-run structure of a business works. Well, we hope that you guys all enjoy this 49 Staff Spotlight Series podcast.
Yep. We can stop talking now and talk to Stacy.
Stacy is way better at talking about sports and maybe just talking than we are.
Yeah, we should probably not question any further.
Okay, let's listen.
Enjoy. Do you want to go ahead, talk a little bit about your name, your business, what's up?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Stacy Meisner. I'm the executive director of the Anchorage Sports Association. Anchorage Sports has been around since about 1975. Initially started with just recreational softball leagues for adults. And then from there, it kind of grew to include other sports. In the early 80s and 90s, they had volleyball, softball, running, broom ball, basketball. Yeah, broom ball, yeah. It's so random. So broom ball is, it's played on ice. So it's kind of like hockey, but you don't wear ice skates. And like instead of hockey sticks, you use brooms, and the ball is like a fairly large sized ball, and you hit it into goals.
Is that like curling?
No.
Okay, I know nothing about sports. I'm going to take all of this out of this interview.
That's totally fine. So yeah, broom ball, running, basketball, and now our major programs still include slow pitch softball, adult volleyball, basketball, and then we've been doing high school fast pitch softball since the late 1990s. Along with Junior Olympic fast pitch softball. And we most recently introduced a youth volleyball program this past year.
Wow. A lot of sports.
Yeah, for sure. Our kind of catchphrase or our slogan is, where community meets competition. And so we want to foster this environment of healthy competition, but also bring together people in a way that really creates a community of people where when you show up to the fields each week or to the courts each week, I mean, the people that you're playing against, you're seeing the same faces from week to week, and you really start to get to know these people as you continue to play.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the structure of your organization?
Yeah. So, I mean, like all nonprofits, like we have a governing board, which we call like our executive board. But then for our major sports programs, we have what's called a sports council. And those sports councils are made up of people who actually participate in the sports. And they're elected in a sense, but for the most part, it's just people who really want to be involved and have a say in how the leagues are run and in how, how we run tournaments and how all of those things are set up. So, we've kind of had this history, and the foundation has been laid, over the past several decades to where now it's just... It seems like a lot when you're hearing about it for the first time, but to me, I mean, it's just the way that things are done. Mm-hmm. And so it's really great that we get so much involvement from people who are actually playing in the leagues and on the teams, because that's what matters most. Those are the people that we're trying to serve and trying to keep involved. And so it's really cool that we get that really high level of involvement from those people, so we can keep the league what the members want it to be.
So I'm really interested in what you said about like it sort of having a life of its own, or like this real momentum. And I'm assuming you haven't been involved in it since the 70s. So I'm wondering sort of what it was like coming in. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your background, sort of coming into this and what it's like now to have this like insiders, maybe outsiders perspective.
I got involved with Anchorage sports in about 2010 when I had finished playing volleyball at UAA. So that's what actually brought me to Alaska was I got recruited to play volleyball for the Seawolves. So I finished my junior, go Seawolves, that's right. So I finished my junior and senior year playing volleyball at UAA, and then I was a graduate assistant for a year, and then a volunteer coach, and then a graduate assistant. And so once I got done playing collegiately, like I still had that very high competitive kind of spirit. And one of my friends was like, hey, come play on our softball team. And I was like, there's softball teams here? And then immediately I was like, well, of course there's softball. Everyone loves playing slow pitch softball. And so I got involved with his team starting out in like co-ed D, and had a great time, met a bunch of people. And then actually that's how I ended up finding out about the city volleyball, like the volleyball part of it. And so, which I thought was kind of funny being a volleyball alumni, having to like go through softball to find the volleyball side of things. But it all kind of worked out. So it's kind of the same in volleyball. I started playing like co-ed D, like the low level stuff, even as like a former collegiate athlete, which was pretty funny, but it didn't take long to, meet this person or that person. And they're like, why are you playing down here? Like, come up and play with us, like in the B League and whatnot. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of fun because it was basically like our people I played softball with who played volleyball also. So it was really more about like spending time with those people when we're not playing softball in the summer. So yeah, and then I just continued to kind of get more and more involved with it. Ended up serving on the volleyball council, and so then I started to learn more about like that side of things and the actual like governing side of it, and being involved in deciding the rules and the league structures and that sort of thing. And then the position came open for their operations manager / executive director, and I was like, and I had finished graduate school and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I was like, I can do this. And, just put my best foot forward. And they, believed I had what it took to do the job. And so that was in August of 2015. So almost 3 years, when we get to August this year.
Do you find a lot of people participating in it like you did and like wanting to get more involved in the councils and being really enamored? Like, what's the story of the typical Anchorage Sports Association player?
Yeah, so you definitely see a lot of that. Like what typically kind of happens is people come to the council in one of two ways. One, they have been playing softball for a long time. Something happens that they don't like, and they're like, I'm going to go to the council and change this.
Sounds a lot like government.
Yes. Yeah, it's very similar. And then the other way is like new people who play on like someone's team who's been on the council for a while, and they're like, hey, you should come and be part of the council. Like, you have a lot of good energy. You have good ideas. I think you'd be a good fit for this. And both of those people who come to the council are valuable because we do need those people who recognize the things that can be better, and we need them to be there to push those things forward. And then the new people, they bring just a really fresh perspective, and they're usually pretty open-minded about like, okay, I'm going to check this out and see what it's all about. And we need both types of those people on our councils to make them successful.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the business side of like running a nonprofit in Anchorage that fulfills this sort of interesting niche that maybe people wouldn't think about when they think of nonprofits?
We are a nonprofit, but our programs are fee-based. And so some nonprofits do like a lot of fundraising to fund their mission, but our programs are fee-based. And so there's like team fees and player fees associated with each league, and that's kind of how we fund not only the program, but also kind of the administrative side of things. So like our office, salaries, the website, all of kind of that infrastructure that you need to run a business. I'm part of a few like nonprofit leadership groups, and one of my favorite kind of slogans, I guess, for nonprofits is that, nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. And so that really kind of puts things in perspective for people. Like, yes, just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean that we don't need money to fulfill our mission and to grow and to expand, just like any other business. We get the benefit of not having to, pay those taxes like other businesses do, because we're fulfilling a need in the community that would not otherwise be met. So something that's really unique, I think, about Anchorage and Anchorage Sports specifically is that we're fulfilling a need that in a lot of other places is actually fulfilled by like the municipality. So you hear a lot about like city leagues. That's essentially what we are, but we are run as a nonprofit separate from the city, even though we do collaborate with them a lot, especially on the softball side of things. But we are, kind of able to do it in a way that it belongs to the people who are participating. So, it kind of all goes back to kind of like that sport council concept, where if the city was running it, we might not have that type of influence over how the leagues are run. So there's definitely a benefit to it. I think the way that we do it, we do come across some challenges when it comes to funding like bigger capital projects. So for instance, we are basically responsible for the upkeep and all of the improvements that take place on about 10 softball fields in Anchorage. And that includes, the fencing, the dirt mix that goes into it, the maintenance throughout the entire summer. And then there's 4 fields that actually have turf on them, and we have financed all 4 of those turf fields. I just did a report of all the maintenance that we've done on those fields for the past 3 to 4 years, and it totaled $500,000. And so it's just super interesting that as a nonprofit that we're actually really kind of kicking in quite a big chunk of money into kind of like the local economy to do these projects, so like the fencing projects, the turfing projects, like we're working with people locally to accomplish those things. And so it's super interesting, as a nonprofit, I think we kind of get overlooked sometimes as being a big contributor to the economy. But the sector is really strong in that way, in that we're not only providing employment, but we're providing these services and this kind of economic boost that I think without the sector would be really noticeable if it wasn't there.
Yeah, totally.
Well,
yeah. Thank you.
I guess one thing that's on my mind is what would make your job easier? What do you wish you saw from the Anchorage community? It sounds like you have a lot of community support as is, but is there kind of like a city support or an institutional level support or something that would aid?
Yeah, I mean, those big capital projects, it's really, really tough to continue to pass the funding of those on to our members. We can only raise our fees so much,
right,
before people will just stop playing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the projects don't need done. And so that's the biggest challenge that we run into year after year, particularly with softball, is figuring out, okay, how much capital funding do we have? How are we going to spend it? And there's always more that we can do. And so, if we could get some kind of funding from the city or the state, and I know we're kind of in this weird fiscal
crisis
mess. Yeah. I mean, to put it lightly, no big deal. It just, man, it'd be nice to have just a financial plan. It just to provide that stability and to know that, okay, we do have a plan, things are going to be okay. And even if that doesn't mean that funds trickle down to us, I think it would at least give some of these businesses in Anchorage the stability they need to continue to be sponsors for us. And so it affects kind of all sides of it.
Is there a way that you've dealt with accessibility issues for people who might be really interested but might not be able to pay fees or something like that?
Yeah, so for our adult programs, and this happens almost with probably about 60 to 80% of our teams, depending on the year, people will go out and solicit sponsorship for their teams. And so then like a local business could sponsor a team, then that team is named after the business. They kind of get their business name out there, and they kind of help pay for some of those costs up front in order to make it more affordable, more accessible for those people. One thing that we did with our youth volleyball program, and which was a big part of why we started it, is that we knew there were a lot of athletes out there who wanted to play club volleyball, but did not do it specifically for, socioeconomic reasons. And that was a big part of why we felt it was important to start our club, and that we could do a high quality club, make it more affordable, and also provide scholarships to those kids who need them. And so this year we've got about 42 athletes who are playing on our youth club teams, and we were able to offer full or partial scholarships to about 8 of them.
If I'm looking to get involved, where do I find you? What's your plug, your website, address? How do I do it?
Yep. So you can head to our website, anchoragesports.com. Our homepage always has kind of the upcoming leagues and open registrations right there on the homepage. And then you can take a peek around and see what else we're offering. So right now we are taking registrations for Slow Pitch Softball League. We are also taking registrations for Pickleball League. I can't believe I didn't mention this earlier. And we're kind of wrapping up with volleyball for the year, but those are kind of the 3 things that we've got going on right now.
We are super excited you're here.
Oh, God.
Edit that out.